Today we're going to do a little book haul, maybe not so little book haul. Today we're going to do a used book haul. So I'm going to go over everything that I bought from January to March. So let's get started. So these 3 books I bought in January, and I got them from a little bookstore, used bookstore, close-ish to my house. And it's really awesome because there's a lot of like bookstores in the middle of nowhere. Like when I've been driving through the countryside, I've just come across signs that say used bookstore, and it's like someone's barn and they have a bunch of used books in it, but they're very, very old. And they don't really have like the best selection of books, but this one is in the middle of nowhere, like a neighborhood, I'm using that term loosely, in the middle of nowhere that has a pretty good selection of books. So I've been on a kick looking for more translated literature, so that's mostly what you're going to see in this haul. The Curious Case of Dassoukine's Trousers. This is translated from the French, and it is a Moroccan novel, and it's a short story collection. So I haven't read it yet, but I bought it during the month that we were reading from Morocco for the Invisible Cities project. I'll link that information below. And yeah, I read something else for it, so I haven't gotten to this yet. Normally, when I go to used bookstores, I'm like hunting for something specific. That's one of the reasons I really like going to used bookstores, is like I enjoy the hunt of looking for a book, as opposed to like the instant gratification of just like being able to buy the book that you want. These ones I actually didn't know about beforehand. I just picked them up based on the publisher, Broken Glass Park. This is, I believe, translated from German. Yep, this is a German novel, and I don't really know much about it. It sounds like it's like a coming-of-age novel. I mainly picked it up because I saw it was Europa editions, and I've liked some stuff that they've put out. And I read the first few sentences and enjoyed the writing style. The Private Life of Mrs. Sharma, and I had never heard of this one before either, but I had read the back. It just sounded interesting. It sounds like you're meeting someone as like they make a change in their life, which in a more contemporary setting, I believe in Dubai. Okay, so those were all the only books I bought in January, and then I went to my local used bookstore in February, and I picked up 6 books, all for the most part translated. It was actually funny because I was just scanning the rows when I was there looking for different presses, and was kind of searching by press because some presses put out a lot more translated fiction. And when I went up to the register, I know the used bookstore owner pretty well because I go in there often. And we chat about books, and he was like, were you shopping by publisher today? And I was like, yes, sir, yes, I was. So that was funny. So the first one is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. This is translated from the Japanese. I have not read this yet, but I've heard good things about Yoko Ogawa. I've heard some people like this book more, some people like the other book more. This one I was able to actually purchase because it's older and they get it in sometimes. So this is the one I went for. Memoirs of a Porcupine. I believe this is translated from the French, and it takes place in the Congo. There's a young boy as the protagonist, and we find him at a transition point again in his life. His father initiates him into something. So also looking forward to this. Next one is Signs Preceding the End of the World by Yuri Herrera. This is translated from the Spanish, and the author is from Mexico. I read this for the Invisible Cities project in March, and it was quick. It was like a few hours it took me to read, and I don't really remember much, and I don't have much to say about it, so I'm not sure if I'm going to actually post a wrap-up about it, but I enjoyed the process of reading it as I was doing it, but the writing style, I don't know if it would work for everyone. It was very much like you were held at a distance. Okay, next one is In the Beginning Was the Sea. This is also translated from the Spanish, and I think that this takes place in Colombia, or the author is Colombian, and this one I did do a wrap-up on, so I will link that. I wasn't a huge fan of it, and the characters were really unlikable. Again, it felt like it was holding you at a distance, but I could let you choose for yourself. I mean, it's a really pretty cover, which is why I was attracted to it in the first place. All right, next one, another small book. Miss I Sandwich by Mieko Kawakami. This is translated from the Japanese. We have a young boy who's the protagonist who is infatuated by Miss Ice Sandwich. I found it cute and endearing and a little weird, and of the ones I've read so far, this one was the one I liked the most, and the cover is just really adorable. And in that same shopping day, I also bought Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. I have not read any Helen Oyeyemi yet, but I had bought, what do I own? What is Not Yours is Not Yours, and I tried it once, but it's a short story collection, and it had a very fairy tale-esque vibe to it, and I wasn't in the mood for it, and listening to people talk about her more, that doesn't feel like the best entry point for her, and so I want to see if I like her, and I think that Mr. Fox would be a better avenue to do that through, and it again is more of a fairy tale vibe. Reading the back of it, it sounded really interesting. Fairy tale romances end with a wedding. The fairy tales that don't get more complicated. In this book, celebrated writer Mr. Fox can't stop himself from killing off the heroines of his novels, and neither can his wife Daphne. And then it goes on. I don't want to give too much away. I don't really like reading much of the back, but decided to give her a shot first with this one. Okay, next collection of books I also purchased in February, but I bought them through Better World Books, and I actually did a kind of haul where because Better World Books is used and they're mainly library books, so they come in a little bit, they look like library editions. There are stickers on them, sometimes they're plastic over the hardcover, so I decided to refurbish them, give them new life, and I will link that video, but I didn't show all the books I actually hauled there, so we'll just go through them now. Okay, we got Tranquility by Attila Bartis, and this is translated from the Hungarian. I don't remember much about this. It's a seismograph of the internal quakes and ruptures of a mother and son trapped within an Oedipal nightmare amidst the suffocating totalitarian embrace of communist Hungary. This doesn't sound all that happy, but I'm interested. And this was super weird, but this used copy edition, like when I was pulling off the stickers from it, it actually came from the library from my hometown, which I don't live anywhere near my hometown. I live across the country from where I grew up, and just the fact that it came from an online resource, and then I got it, and it was like, it said the city I grew up in. I was like, that is super strange. Anyway. Okay, and then I bought God Dies by the Nile by Nawal Saadawi. This is translated from the Arabic, and she is from Egypt, and she is a known feminist writer, and I bought this the month that we were reading for Egypt, but then I didn't actually read it yet. So the next one I was kind of annoyed because it didn't come with a dust jacket, and I would think that they would tell you that, or it would say it in the description, but like I bought it used, I'm not that bothered, and it is, you can't really see the name of it. It is The Mustache by Emmanuel Herrera. I have a horrible accent. I believe this is translated from the French, and I just remember it sounding so weird. Something about like this man being obsessed with his mustache, or his mustache taking on some sort of life. I don't know. Okay, next one, Song of Lawino, Son of Akol. This is translated from an indigenous African language. So it's translated from the Akoli, and I think that this is from Nigeria or Uganda. Am I making that up? Okay, yeah, no, the author's from northern Uganda. I was right. Okay. Yeah, and I think that these two poems, if I'm not mistaken, it's hard to understand what it's about, but I think it's like there's Song of Lawino and Song of Akol, and they're two poems, and they're like kind of in contradiction to each other or commenting on each other in some capacity, so it sounds really interesting. I've never heard anyone talk about it. I was deep on the internet trying to find books translated from indigenous languages of different countries or different parts of the world, I should say, because country boundaries don't really correlate to language boundaries. And I came across this. Another book I came across within that pursuit is Sin is a Puppy That Follows You Home. This is an Islamic soap opera complete with a polygamous household, virtuous woman, scheming harlots, and black magic. So it sounds like fun. And it is the first full-length novel ever translated from the Hausa into English. And the author is from Nigeria. I feel like I've talked about this book a lot on my channel, The Hospital by Ahmed Bunani. I read this from the library, thought it was really weird, knew I would want to reread it at some point because I don't think I got everything, so then I got myself my own copy, and I think it's weird and cute. I like the colors at play. As Though She Were Sleeping by Elias Khoury. This is translated from the Arabic, and I don't know much about these, so I really don't know how interesting this video is going to be since I don't know much about any of these. But that's the point, because I do hope to know something about them in a year's time when I'm going to come back and look at this video and see how many of these I've actually read, because the goal of this is kind of to keep myself accountable and read the books that I'm buying. I will link to a video where I'm doing that this year with my TBR, and I'm reacting to the books I hauled at this time last year. Okay, anyway, back to the book. What is it about? Oh yeah, so Milia's response to her new husband and to the Arab world of 1947 is close her eyes and drift into parallel worlds. Identity shift, present, past, and future mingle and merge. She finds herself able to converse with the dead and foresee the future. So it sounds very hallucinatory and dreamlike, and it's long, so I don't know how that will play out in a long context. I typically prefer that in smaller doses in like a novella format, like The Hospital, but we shall see. Okay, and then the last two from Better World Books are part of a series, With Blood on the Sand and a Veil of Spears by Bradley P. Beaulieu. I just finished the first book in this series. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I bought the books, and I'm interested enough. I think I was just having issues with like the pacing, and I was looking up reviews after, and a lot of people have issues with the characters, which I found interesting because I had a fine time connecting with them, but I think I was more intrigued by what was going on and trying to figure out what was coming on next. Yeah, so I think plotting and pacing were maybe, it suffered a little bit, but I own them, even though they're chunkers, and so I'm going to keep reading into them. So, not surprised I haven't finished these yet. I just finished the first book like 2 days ago. That was it for February. Now we will go into March, where I cooled down a little bit and didn't buy as much. So these I bought in March, and I got them again from my local used bookstore. I love that place. This is the thing. You can't expect me to go into a used bookstore and not buy a book, because I just love used bookstores. I love the concept of them. I love that it's like recycling books and giving them new life. And I love the hunt for them. And I just love that they exist, and I want to keep supporting them. It went like where I grew up, the used bookstores kind of all shut down for the most part, like the local small ones, not like the half-price books type thing, and it's just kind of sad. I can't go into a used bookstore and not give them my support. So I'm doing a service, really. That's what's going on. Okay, so A General Theory of Oblivion. This is translated from the Spanish, I think it's Portuguese, and it takes place in Angola. I've been on the hunt for this book for years because it's been on my TBR, but my library does not own it, and I finally came across it at my used bookstore, and so that was exciting. And again, I know nothing about it. It's just been on my TBR for years for some reason. Okay, the next one, not a translated one, Tracks by Louise Erdrich. I bought one of her other books earlier last year in this Love Medicine series. I think I might have actually bought Love Medicine. And I was going to just read them in chronological order of when they were published. But then I watched Danny from Thunderbird Woman Reads video on the reading order you should read Louise Erdrich in. And she said you should read this one first. So that is why I bought it. I've never read one of her books before, so I'm hoping I like her writing style, but I've heard so many good things about her that I would really be surprised if I didn't. So I bought this one so that I could start off the series correctly. And I will link that video above. I thought it was super helpful. So for anyone who cares to know the reading order that is recommended. These next two were books that I did not know about before going into the bookstore, but I picked them up based on their publisher and they sounded interesting. So this one is The Last Brother. It is translated from, I believe, the French, and it takes place on Mauritius. I might be saying that wrong. It's a country, the island of Mauritius, and I was debating not buying this. Like I kept putting it down and coming back to it, and then when I brought it over to the counter, the said bookstore owner, the one that knows me well, told me he loved this book, and so now I was much more interested to read it after that because we chat about books that we like, and we don't have totally aligned tastes, but on literary fiction we tend to have similar tastes on occasion. Okay, this one, The Pendragon Legend, I believe it's also translated from the Hungarian, and it just sounded, I picked it up, I read the back, it sounded bonkers. At a London soiree, a young Hungarian scholar is introduced to the Earl of Gwynedd, a reclusive eccentric who is the subject of strange rumors. Invited to the family seat, Pendragon Castle in North Wales, the protagonist receives a mysterious phone call warning him not to go. Once there, nothing is quite as it seems. And it says it's a romp and kind of a murder mystery, and it was published originally, I think it's a classic. Yeah, it's originally published in 1934, so it's a classic from a different country that I don't know much about. Okay, and then on the last day of the month, I was actually on my first work trip I had to go on since the pandemic started, and I was in Baltimore, and I, of course, had to visit a local bookstore and give them my business, and so I went to one and I found a copy of Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. So I'm putting this as unread in my TBR trackers, but I did read it when I was in high school, and I don't remember really much about it. It was a class, it was like an honors class where we would read the books, we would read at night, and then we would come in and have a quiz, and then we would like chat through them. And I feel like I was just young, my brain wasn't fully formed, I wasn't really getting everything that happened, but I hear good things about this, so I've done this thing where I've kind of gone back to some of the books I read in high school or I'm trying to reacquaint myself and like read it through the eyes of an adult with more comprehension skills, because I could rant about this for days, but I don't think we're doing children a good service by having them read classics that they don't understand. I mean, I myself am a huge reader. I've always loved to read. Even when I was reading in school, I loved to read, but I didn't understand what I was reading, and so I didn't like reading for school, and so that just put me off of classics in general, and I've been graduated from high school for over a decade, so has it been a decade? Yeah, for a decade. So it's taken me as a reader that long to try to like delve my way back into classics, so I don't know. I just kind of think it's a disservice. Anyway, that wasn't the point of this, but it really wants to focus on this book, which is interesting. And that was my last book that I bought. So that's all I got for this video. Let me know what you think about any of these, which ones I should read first, and until next time, happy reading!